Children of water, clay, and wind, they ran like deer, swam like fish, hunted like shadows. They lived where we now walk, where we raise cities without remembering the names that once echoed through the land before the empires arrived. But even though they were untamed, they were defeated, not by battle, but by disease, by ambush, by betrayal. Today, we will resurrect the story of the Goitacá, the tribe that haunted colonizers and became legend along the banks of the Paraíba do Sul. A story that was buried, but never forgotten. The land of the unreachable ones. Across the vast stretches of the Brazilian coast, from Maranhão to the far edges of Rio Grande do Sul, one power reigned supreme: the Tupi-Guarani peoples. Nearly the entire coastline was theirs, with only a few rare exceptions. Among those exceptions, however, emerged one of the most fearsome tribes in the history of colonial Brazil, the Goitacá, or rather, the Goitacá. Though they didn't belong to the Tupi-Guarani group, their name likely came from the Tupi language itself. And there's no doubt, Goitacá is a Tupi word. What remains wrapped in mystery is its true meaning. Some say it comes from guata, meaning to run. Others claim it derives from Aba Yitagua, the man who knows how to swim. In other words, their name spoke to what defined them most: running or swimming. And if the chroniclers of the 16th century were right, they did both like few beings on this planet. They ran like the wind. They swam as if born in water. But here's something crucial. Every single account comes from someone who had the misfortune or the courage to get close. Because those who approached the Goitacá died. Now listen to this. While Brazil's noble captains and land grantees were usually wealthy and powerful men, there was one who stood out. Just one. Utterly poor. Pero de Goy. Among the 14 donatarios who received land when Brazil was carved into hereditary captaincies, he was the only one who wasn't part of the royal bureaucracy or a career soldier. He was merely a lieutenant to the ambitious Martim Afonso de Sousa, whose expedition, by the way, still deserves its own episode. It was from that expedition, between the years 1531 and 1532, that Brazil was sliced into captaincies. And as a reward, Pero de Goy received the harshest one of all. Maybe not the poorest in natural resources, but the hardest to reach by sea. His captaincy was small, 30 leguas of coastline, about 180 kilometers, while others, like Bahia, stretched well beyond 400. It spanned from the mouth of the Itapemirim River in northern Espírito Santo to the Macai River near the region of São Tomé. And so, it became known as the Capitania de São Tomé. But it was a geographic nightmare. A land of swamps and sickly marshes, with no natural ports, no sheltered coves, where rivers like Itabapoana, Itapemirim, São Mateus, and Paraíba do Sul poured their waters into a wild, muddy sea. Brown waters, dark, a far cry from the crystal blues of Búzios or Cabo Frio, which, by the way, already belonged to Martim Afonso himself and had once been Tamoyo territory. Yes, the Tamoyos lived along that stretch. Farther north were the Tupinicans, and what remained for the Goitacá was what no one else wanted: the flooded, forgotten, and treacherous lands. Territory where only the truly unreachable could survive. The truth is, the Goitacá may have been forced into those lands long before. The tribe of the untamed. When the Tupi-Guarani reached the Brazilian coastline, sometime around the beginning of the Common Era, they brought with them a reign of force. They advanced along the coast, pushing every other tribe inland, far from the sea. Driven into the dry hinterlands, into the harsh scrublands, these forgotten peoples were descendants of the ancient Sambaki builders, and they belonged to the J linguistic group. The Tupis called them Tapuayas, a name soaked in contempt. In the Tupi language, Tapuya meant the other, the ones who were not like them, the barbarians. It was a word used for everyone outside the Tupi civilization, strangers, savages, outsiders, any tribe that wasn't Tupi. And among these Tapuyas were the Goitacá. But the Goitacá weren't just different. They were the wildest, the most primitive, the most feared, taller than the Tupis, who already weren't short. Their hair reached down to their backs, and they cut their bangs with purpose, to make their foreheads appear broader, more imposing, more fearsome. They carried massive spears. They walked completely naked, sometimes covered in genipap dye or adorned with feathers. They slept on the ground, never in hammocks. And as for human flesh? No, the Goitacá didn't eat people as part of a ritual. It wasn't about revenge, nor a spiritual ceremony. They ate human flesh like others ate fish or fruit, to satisfy hunger, to survive. They lived on stilt houses around a shadowy lagoon, which today bears a name that borders on prophecy. Lagoa Feia, ugly lagoon. They roamed the banks of the Paraíba do Sul River, where today stands the city of Campos dos Goitacazes. There, in the heart of the swamp, archaeologists would later uncover 5 tons of remnants from this fierce civilization. But it wasn't just their appearance or their diet that made them legendary. What haunted the chroniclers most was their speed. They said no one, absolutely no one, could outrun them. Not soldiers, not even allied natives. They sprinted through marshes, waist deep in water, legs sinking into mud. And still, they flew. Friar Vicente do Salvador, the first historian of Brazil, wrote that the Goitacá were more amphibian than human. They lived with water at their waists. They ran through lagoons, tides, swamps, and vanished into the mist. Some claimed they could chase down a fleeing deer, run beside it, and seize it with their bare hands. But the most unbelievable account we've received is also the most brutal. According to witnesses cited by Friar Vicente himself, the Goitacá rite of passage into adulthood went like this. At 18, a young warrior dove into the sea in search of a shark. When he found one, he'd punch it square in the nose. Startled, the shark would open its mouth, and the young man would jam a wooden stick between its jaws. With its mouth forced open, he'd then reach inside and tear out the creature's guts. This wasn't a myth, it was proof. Every Goitacá warrior wore a necklace made of shark teeth, a symbol of bravery and initiation. Friar Vicente, in awe, described, "They are men more amphibian than earthly, whom no Portuguese can capture. When pursued, they vanish into the lagoons, where none, on foot, on horseback, or by boat, can reach them. They are able to fish sharks with their bare hands, carrying a stick that they thrust into the shark's mouth after striking its snout, preventing it from closing. Then, with the other hand, they tear out its entrails and bring it to shore, not to eat, but to make necklaces and arrows from its teeth, venomous and deadly. And faced with this, all we can say is, long live the Goitacá." The silent extermination. Some might argue, oh, but Friar Vicente do Salvador was exaggerating. Maybe, but he wasn't the only one to write about the Goitacá. Calvinist pastor Jean de Lery, who came to Brazil during the French occupation of Rio de Janeiro, left this account. They are great admirers of human flesh. They eat it as nourishment, not out of revenge. They are the most barbaric, cruel, and untamable people of all the nations in the New World. Strange and savage beings who cannot even live among themselves, constantly at war with neighbors and outsiders. And confirming this? None other than his declared enemy, the Franciscan friar André Thevet. Thevet despised Léry. He wrote an entire book just to contradict him. But when it came to the Goitacá, he said almost the exact same thing. When the Goitacá capture an enemy, they slaughter him immediately, and they eat him, almost raw, as they would any meat. Thevet goes even further. He tells the story of a Goitacá warrior captured by a Tupi. The man was forced to kneel, struck in the head with a club. His skull cracked open. His brains spilled out. But he stood up, and staggering, he attacked his executioner. Thevet closes the account with a chilling line. "I would never have believed it, had I not seen it with my own eyes." Such were the Goitacá, and it was right in the heart of their territory that the unfortunate Pero de Goy was granted his captaincy. The captaincy of São Tomé, the far end of Espírito Santo, where not even the devil wanted to live. There, Pero de Goys tried to found a settlement, Vila da Rainha. It was attacked, again and again, by the Goitacá, by pirates, by fate itself. Defeated, he gave up everything, left Brazil, and died far away, in Ceylon, present-day Sri Lanka. Because in that ancient swamp, there was no victory to be had. The Goitacá could not be conquered with weapons, nor with strategy. So the colonizers resorted to one last tactic, the cruelest of all. In the early 17th century, the colonists left clothing infected with smallpox along the trails of Goitacá territory. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. The natives touched the clothes. The disease spread, and the plague fell upon the untouchables. The tribe, once 12,000 strong, was exterminated. Silently, swiftly, permanently, they vanished from history. They might have disappeared completely, if centuries later they hadn't founded the city of Campos dos Goitacazes. And if, around the year 1990, they hadn't raised a statue in honor of a Goitacá warrior. But in 2006, the statue was torn down, removed, thrown into an empty lot, and there it lay, withering, like the tribe did, like their memory does, like Brazil itself, when it chooses to forget. Another chapter fades into the dust of time. Another indigenous soul rises from the ashes just for a moment, to remind us where we came from and what lies beneath our feet. Because this is the truth for anyone living in the Americas. We live atop the bones of those who once called this land their home. We walk on silence, on forgetfulness, on the dead. Of course, if you had crossed paths with the Goitacá back then, there wouldn't have been much conversation. They weren't diplomats. They didn't give second chances, but killing with smallpox, spreading disease on purpose. That was cowardice beyond reason. And that's how this story ends. Tragic, chaotic, and invisible. A story that will never be on a school test. But maybe it should be. Leave a like and share this video. We'll see you in the next one.